Hello and welcome to the 67th Everybody Dice podcast. I am Steve and today I am joined by
Ian.
and only Ian. We are once again Darryl-less. If anyone is worried about his health, I don't know. Is he on the moon again or
Uh,
I don't really keep up with what he's doing.
I've lost interest in what he does with his existence. I think legally, if he died, I'd get the dog.
Oh man, that's
I think he'd
that's
fight. He would fight that. His mum would fight that, and his missus would fight that. However, I reckon I could take him, especially if he's dead.
it's not going to be anything to do with legal documents or anything like that. It's just a fist fight to the
It's a
death.
royal. It's a royal rumble.
Yeah. All
That's
right.
the ticket, right? To win a dog after somebody dies, it's royal rumble. That's
Okay.
always been the legal precedent.
Just specifically for dogs.
Yeah, not cats.
No, no,
I
no,
think
no.
that's done through like a will.
Okay, that's done through actual legal documentation, but dogs,
Yeah,
it's Fight Club, baby. Um.
absolutely.
Anyway, how are you?
Yeah, I'm alright. How are you?
I'm okay. I am gearing up for a long night tonight because we're recording this on a Sunday and it's a big wrestling event tonight and I am watching it. I'm going to be up till
It's
about
the
5, 6 in the morning, sometime
it's
around
the
then.
Royal Rumble. It's the Royal Rumble to see who gets Daryl's dog.
Exactly. It's on pay-per-view. I
Yeah.
don't know, are we
If you
charging
want
like...
me to, if you want to see me punch two women in the face repeatedly in order to win a dog, that's
Oh,
your ticket.
oh, okay. Oh, God. Brilliant. Okay, I'm not going to say any more about that.
It's equal rights. I'd punch a woman. I'd punch a man. I'd punch anyone
In the
if it's
exact
for
same way.
Onyx. If I get Daryl's dog, I'll punch you. Doesn't matter who you are.
Yeah. Oh, dear. Prime Minister, gone. Like,
I honestly, I would not need to be rewarded with Daryl's dog to punch Boris Johnson.
yeah, the Dalai Lama, you know, bang,
Yeah, I'd punch that.
done.
Yeah, Bosh.
All of them, just line them up.
If
Just
anyone's setting up a like a pay-per-view fight with Boris Johnson, I'll do it for free. I'll pay to be the guy that gets to hit Boris Johnson.
oh wow, okay, yeah. I mean,
Get me a
it's gonna be a lot. I feel like there's a lot of people in this country that will probably challenge you on that. I imagine.
sure, but if everyone puts in money to fight Boris Johnson, and
Hmm.
then we use that money to fund the NHS because he's not doing it,
Oh yeah, good point. I like the way you think.
and we all get to punch Boris.
Ian for Prime
Result.
Minister.
Yeah,
Let's do it.
this has
This
been
is
a
your
thing for a
campaign.
while, isn't it?
I think so.
The
Yeah.
Ian for Prime Minister campaign with the big red banners unfurling, and
Oh man, and your whole campaign will literally just be focused on raising money for the NHS by raising money for to allow people to punch Boris Johnson.
find your local Tory, cage them, set fire to the cage, all for charity.
Yes,
Who wouldn't donate?
I'd be donating very, very quickly.
Flawless, flawless political strategy.
And at which point we'll have a flawless segue into our board game news. Let's talk about some board games. Right, okay. I say we want to talk about board games and the news. The first one is a rather unfortunate subject. We are talking about, no, not Essence 20. We're talking about the Broken Token. Okay, so a couple of weeks ago, there was a story that emerged that the CEO and founder of the Broken Token, Greg Spence, there were some sexual assault allegations against him, and he very much fought against them. It wasn't very convincing, and it turns out he's now stepped down as the CEO of the Broken Token. this doesn't really come as much of a surprise at all. I mean, the Broken Token make really, really good board game accessories. So usually they make things like inserts for board games. They also make a couple of accessories to help kind of like enhance, other games already. So they provide a lot of decent stuff, but this kind of makes me not want to buy from them anymore. I imagine him going is a means of damage limitation, I think, in terms of image and stuff like that. He's not gone from the company, bear in mind. He's just stepping down as CEO as of September the 3rd. So yeah, like, this is something that isn't. We're not going to localize this to board gaming here. This is something that the whole world is kind of like, within all kind of industries, is being cracked down on now, because basically unacceptable behavior has just been going on and has just been passed over for way too long. I think it's coming back to bite a lot of people now, I think. What do you think?
I mean, the at the moment it's still allegations, right?
At the moment, it's allegations, yes.
But the innocent party stepping down from his role feels like a unlikely. Do you know what I mean? If
Yeah,
you,
I mean,
I'm not
he's.
guilty, but I'll start taking the punishment now. Feels
So,
like a weird.
so the argument he had in his apology was that he admitted to relationships with people that are throwing around the allegations. He is claiming that everything was consensual. Um, yeah, so he originally denied it. This is the problem. He originally denied that anything had happened at all. He then changed his stance and said that there was a relationship with this person and it was consensual. And the problem is everything starts to snowball as soon as someone changes their story, because you're admittedly showing that you've been somewhat untruthful to begin with.
You've been willing to lie once.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a real unfortunate thing. It's a shame that this kind of thing is happening within the board game industry as well. Hopefully, there's less of it in the board gaming industry, and this is a more isolated event. Sadly, the way things going and the kind of stories that are coming to light, I don't know whether it would be, to be honest. But it's good that these things are being cracked down on anyway. But yeah, the day-to-day operations of the Broken Token have now been turned over to Kelsey Royer. But it does confirm that Spence is not actually leaving the company. If you'd like to know more on this story, because I don't really want to talk about this for too much longer, head on over to boardgamequest.com. You can find the rest of this story on there. They go into a bit more detail about it all, but like I say, I don't really want to dwell on this a bit more. It's good that it's being cracked down on. Anything else to add?
I would say that at the moment it's allegations.
Yeah.
I think people get very, very hyped up when they read stories like this.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to say it hasn't happened. I don't want to say it has. That's not for me to decide, but it is worth noting that nothing's been confirmed yet.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
maybe tiptoe with a little caution, but we'll see what happens as events unfurl. But at the minute, it's all allegations and nothing confirmed. But I mean, I don't know why you'd lie, and I don't know why you'd step down.
Yeah. I mean,
feels like shooting yourself in the foot a little.
It does a bit, yeah. I mean, it is important to note that whenever stuff like this happens, don't go out of your way to necessarily, like, especially when they're allegations and things like that, don't hound the person, basically. Like, these things will sort themselves out. I think certainly if it looks like an injustice is being done, then certainly, like, say something about that then. Like, for example, if it becomes very much like this is something that definitely happened but he's getting away with it, then by all means do. But whilst they're allegations, it just seems like, just let the situation.
Yeah, I think the world has a funny way of reacting to what they perceive rather than what's
I
been
mean,
proven.
a lot of it is like you kind of almost see it becomes bullying, especially with things like Twitter and stuff like that, whilst things are still in a very early stage of it. Like I say, it's important that the people involved
Yeah.
sort everything out first. This is potentially something very horrible that's happened, and if it turns out this is definitely what's happened, then he deserves all of the
Sure. By all means,
losing
once
his
it's been
role and stuff like
proven
that.
and everything's been confirmed, do what you want because
Yeah,
people who do stuff like that wouldn't do the same thing for someone else. So
yeah.
karma, I guess. But
Anyway,
yeah,
let's move on to something a bit more positive now, because I flashed it up on screen a second ago. We're now talking about the Essence 20 system that's coming in. So, Renegade Games, it turns out, has basically bought a load of licenses from Hasbro to produce RPG content for a lot of their brands. So, as you can see on the screen right now, we're looking at Power Rangers, Transformers, and G.I. Joe that have been announced for this. But to go with it, they've actually announced an entirely new system called the Essence 20 system. So, what is the Essence 20 system? It's a D20 based system and uses the D20 along with a character skill die from D2 to D20 to resolve tests and combat. As with many RPGs that use a D20, you need to exceed the difficulty of a test to succeed. Character creation focuses on origin, role, and influence, which influence a character's strength, speed, smarts, and social attributes. Okay, so again, this is coming from the Board Game Quest website again. I imagine with the kind of titles that they're discussing here, I imagine what's probably more to the Essence 20 system is I bet this has been largely simplified. I say that only because these are the kind of licenses that are going to be popular with children. So these could well be a way of, say, bringing children into role playing and stuff like that. That's what I'm very much picking up from it. If I was to read from the Renegade statement that they put out, they said that characters with specialization in the skill being tested get to roll their skill die and all dice below it, and pick the highest result to add to their D20 roll, increasing their odds of success. It's probably not like the simplest system from that, but it still seems to be a fairly basic one. I'm quite interested by these systems just because, say, or should I say, some of these licenses. I'm largely looking at Transformers because I kind of like the idea of mech combat and stuff like that. Like, I know Transformers technically aren't mechs, but I imagine you can do something a bit more unique compared to other RPGs and stuff with that. I know there's stuff out there like Robotech, and you played kind of mech style RPG before, didn't you, Ian? I think you said.
yeah. I can't remember what it's called.
It was like a single session thing, wasn't it?
We did do a single session only because I think most who got involved didn't enjoy it.
Yeah.
I know Phil didn't particularly enjoy DMing it.
But I think I
Um,
remember you saying, wasn't there like you had both a pilot and a robot for it or something like that?
yeah, so you had like a mech suit and your pilot stats, and it was separated in a way that you could do like some missions where you'd be on foot and some missions where you'd be in your mech suit. And we only really did the mech suit stuff.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think Phil was very like, meh, this isn't as roleplay as I would like, and wasn't particularly fussed about doing another one.
Yeah. I mean, this obviously won't have the pilot side of it. This will be you are actually the robot kind of thing.
Hmm.
Obviously, in Transformers, you're not massive mechs as well, but like these other ones have big potential as well. Like GI Joe is obviously a very military based cartoon, so I can see that playing in a very it's going to be in a very specialized role. I think role playing always works best when you're very much put in the position of playing a good guy, and GI Joe are very firmly positioned as good guys, within their world. I imagine it's going to be you're going to be taking down the various forces of Cobra Commander and stuff like that. And Power Rangers, I imagine, will be somewhere between a kaiju and a martial artsy kind of thing, much like the show kind of plays out. So that could be kind of interesting, I think, as well. I don't know what you think of these licenses at all, whether anyone jumps
I
out at
think
you.
they're designed as licenses for IPs for people to experience tabletop RPGs with their IPs of choice.
Yeah,
Because I, I, as you said, I think it looks toned down.
yeah,
It doesn't look like it's going to be whole hog complicated, which isn't necessarily a bad thing.
yeah,
Um, it's hard to say without seeing more, but the IPs that have been chosen, you're probably going to get a younger audience, or you're getting people who are really into that stuff that are our age,
yeah.
because it's stuff that came out when we were younger. So it'll be interesting to see how it develops. It's not something I have a huge interest in playing.
Okay.
Um,
None of these
I
appeal at all, then,
I think
really.
Power Rangers I view as sort of fairly quirky,
Yeah,
but not something I'm fascinated in getting involved with. It's almost like a huge meme to me. It's
yeah,
like that
yeah,
part of my childhood is like it's just a bit silly, and that's great. That's it. That's its thing. I don't have a huge interest in it. GI Joe, I'd never really got anything into. It's not something I'm fussed about. And Transformers, I like, but do I want to play an RPG as a Transformer? I'm not sure. I don't, none of these things have a huge amount of story depth
mm. Yeah. I
because
can
they're
see what
kids
you mean.
programs. It follows the same platform of how things go each week. Oh, Cobra Commander's done this. GI Joe, and then they sort it.
Yeah.
And Power Rangers, that's one of the same four bad guys has turned up at the same quarry.
There's trouble in Angel
They,
Grove.
yeah, it's
Just
that. And I can't see a huge amount of fun to be had from a RP perspective.
yeah, yeah, possibly,
That's
but
my opinion. I can't imagine enjoying role playing in a situation where it matches the IP itself, which is quite a repetitive kids TV show format.
yeah, they're
But I guess we'll
episodic.
see.
They all three of these, you don't tend to get a proper overarching story in all of them. It's all this is the
No.
episode. This is what's happening. It's all resolved by the end of this episode, kind of thing.
There's also not a huge amount of background lore that would allow you to explore your own section. Does that make sense?
Um,
Like, I mean, maybe Transformers.
I was
There's
gonna say I know
sort of
there's quite a lot of backstory and stuff to Transformers. I know.
yeah, like I don't know enough about GI Joe to maybe judge, but it never seemed like something that has a huge amount of depth.
Yeah,
And everything I've experienced of Power Rangers is I feel like I could watch the same episode 5 times and get the same joy out of watching 5 different episodes.
yeah, sure, sure.
It's the same stuff.
But
So hmm,
yeah,
I don't know where the story comes from. I don't know where your story fits in. If you're doing an RPG, you kind of want your story to be part of the story. Like stuff like D&D, you build your own worlds or you fit characters into existing worlds, but they're so vast and so unusual. You can kind of carve your own story out of the bedrock of what's going on.
yeah,
And most of the RPGs I enjoy the most fit that as well. So, um, obviously, the Star Wars RPG, the galaxy is so vast, you could have your own huge story and it not even scratch the sides of what happens, and kind of makes it almost legitimate in its own canon,
yeah,
in your own head canon. It could have happened, sort of thing. I don't see where your own story as a Power Ranger fits into that. I don't know. It's again hard to say about seeing more, but feels like a streamlined system for newer players more than anything.
yeah. I mean, I think I've talked about this before on one of the earlier podcasts and stuff like that, but another real problem you face with running licensed RPGs is the fact that everyone knows the lore behind everything, and sometimes that can work against an RPG system. Like I've heard stories before about how someone is running a Star Wars campaign and their campaign is moving in one direction, then for some reason And this is, admittedly, this is the fault of the players or the GM, depending on how you look at it. So you've got to be smart about how you're running it. But let's say they made Darth Vader turn up at some point, and then all of a sudden, Darth Vader, who's not really part of the story that they're following, he's been there and he's gone away or something like that. Like let's say that there was some sort of battle or something going on one planet. It's been spearheaded by Darth Vader, who kind of takes his leave after a while and stuff like that. But he's not the objective. The objective is something else. But every player in the group then goes, "No, we want to follow Darth Vader," and all of a sudden it takes you away from that storyline and gets them. Like, admittedly, that's not the fault of the RPG. It's usually the fault of either the GM or the group when things like that happen. But it is always
there's ways of doing it. Darth Vader's a weird example because anyone in their right mind in that universe, if Darth Vader shows up, you go the opposite way. Like,
yeah,
he's almost he's not. What's the best way to put it? To a lot of people, he's a myth.
yeah,
He's not a thing. He's like a fear tactic that the Empire uses. So the idea of actually seeing that he's real and he exists and he's terrifying, I think a lot of real people in that universe would be like, that's a hell no from me.
yeah.
So I would say that's a fault of the players, because would your characters seek death?
Yeah, yeah. But I mean,
maybe, but should they? And should they drag everyone else along?
Yeah.
Probably not.
But I think, like, the point is that there's
right,
things
though.
there that can drag
It's the people
focus
who
away.
like go, oh, you meet Lando Calrissian. It's like, oh, I pull out my blaster and I shoot him in the head.
Yeah, yeah, or
And
stuff
you're like
that.
Oh, cool, you're a penis then. Excellent. Good job.
Yeah, and I think that's something that you... Like, it is hard because everyone would like to play in their favourite universes and stuff like that, but it can sometimes just be like one or two problem players or something like that can pull one of these campaigns in one of these universes apart.
Yeah, I think the point is when a DM does do that, it's to help drop you into the depth of the universe in a way, something you can relate to, which is nice. And I think where players that abuse it perhaps aren't there to enjoy the story of the campaign. They're there to just mess about. Which, that's some people's fun and some groups' fun.
Yeah, totally.
But, if you don't have a reason to shoot someone in the head and you're going, that'll mess with the DM because, then Lando's dead and, doesn't exist in the story anymore. And it just, at that point, you're like, cool, that was...
Yeah, but to
kind of
just
ruin that for everyone.
But to just get back onto the Essence 20 system,
sorry.
I think, really just to close this up and stuff like that, I think what is good here is this is an RPG that parents that play RPGs and stuff like that can sit down with their kid and just play a real short RPG just as a way of kind of like introducing them to RPGs and seeing whether it's for them or something like that. It gives them a topic that they'll be quite interested in, and it can be played. I imagine these will play in short chunks because, like you said, the TV series episodes themselves are "What's Megatron doing this time? Stop him!" or something like that. So perhaps it's something that's not really aimed at us necessarily.
It's 100% not aimed at me, which is why I've got so much in my head that I dislike about it. But that. Not everything is designed for every individual, so it has its place.
Yeah. There's no reason for something not to exist because I don't like it. Someone else likes it, it's there for them. It's not there for me. It's fine. But anyway, that is everything we've got in the news for this week. So, shall we move on to what we've been playing?
Yeah.
Okay. Alright, so first up basically our regular thing. I'm going to talk about Arkham Horror real quickly because I've played with a new deck. I got the Stella Clark deck recently, which is the Survivor deck out of all the beginner deck things, and I just ran it through a rather disastrous run of Night of the Zealot where everything basically went wrong. It was just a really bad run. I had quite a bad hand of cards because it's a really interesting deck where you gain something from failure all the time. So it has a lot of cards in its deck where if you fail your dip into the chaos bag and you fail a skill test, you can then start using stuff. Like you might use one which says you fail the test but negate the effects and take another turn. Or you might have another one that says when you fail this test, draw a card, or something like that. And what it means is that you could end up with loads of cards that really stack and ramp you up when you do fail. So when you're ready to jump back into the next one, all of a sudden you've got loads of stuff ready to go. It can be quite useful because quite often you have a mythos phase before the player phase. And what that means is that if your mythos phase event that happens to you when you're playing a Stellar Clark, if that is something that you can't pass, sometimes you might be tempted to take the hit on it in order to deliberately fail it, to use one of those abilities that says you gain an extra turn, because all of a sudden you, rather than failing one of your 3 actions on your turn, all of a sudden you've got 4 actions to take on your turn at the expense of whatever event happened to you, which is really, really cool. I only struggled with it only because I wasn't able to draw weapons out and stuff like that. I got really unlucky in the second scenario in Night of the Zealot, where you have this whole thing where you're checking a town for cultists, and there was this whole thing of, in order to bring out a cultist, you have to already have 2 clues. But there's this horrible card that's in the Mythos deck that has this whole thing of either lose 1 clue or take 2 physical damage, I think it was, or it was 2 horror. It was one of the 2 anyway. And I just said I'd rather not lose a clue when I drew the first one of those cards. So I took the horror and spent my clues in order to bring out a cultist. Turns out that's the only cultist that I found over the course of the game, because then in the next two rounds, I drew the exact same cards again, and not having any clues at all meant I had to take the 2 horror again, and I was gone. I was dead within, basically within 5 rounds, I think. My character was wiped out, because it was just a bad draw of the cards. Maybe I didn't shuffle the deck properly, or maybe it was just really bad luck. I don't know, but yeah, that I will say it's a fun deck. It's a really, really fun deck. It allows you to play solo and not feel like the whole thing's against you, because quite often, when you're playing with someone else, one person can attract the attention of a lot of monsters whilst the other one goes off searching for clues and stuff like that. Whereas in a solo play game, if a monster attaches itself to you, you either have to make your skill tests to break away from it and break engagement, or just carry on with what you're doing and just taking damage and stuff like that. And it's not easy to heal damage in Arkham Horror, and it accumulates quickly as well. So sometimes playing solo can not be quite as rewarding. You can't really. It's funny, like when you're playing with someone else, you can be clever about it. When you're playing by yourself, you don't have that option there. And all of a sudden, things like equipping yourself with allies and things like that you can throw under the bus by having them take all the damage from an attack or something like that, they become far more important in a solo game. But anyway, that's my little bit about Arkham Horror. I don't want to talk about it too much because we talk about it way too often on here. And I want to move on to Istanbul, which I finally got to play the other day. So there's been a couple of games. The other one I'll come to later. But Istanbul has been on the list of games to play for a long time now. I've talked about playing it digitally before. We managed to play a 3-player game of this the other day, where you essentially have a stack that represents your character. It represents your merchant, which is you, and then you have 4 assistants that are all stacked underneath. The idea is you have this grid of places that you can visit, and every time you visit somewhere, you leave one of your assistants behind and you carry out the action on there. Or if you already have an assistant on that space, you move on to it and you pick them up, putting them back onto your stack, and you get to take the action. but you always have to move at least 1 or 2 spaces, so you can't take the same action twice. The aim of the game is to be the first person to gain 5 rubies, and you gain rubies through a number of different means, whether it is maxing yourself out on abilities of some sort. It could be just sheer money. You make a load of money and you just pay for rubies, or you can start doing goods exchanges and stuff like that. So the idea is you have a wheelbarrow, you move to certain spaces, and it might say max linen. So on your little wheelbarrow, you move your thing up to say you've got the maximum amount of linen right now. Then it's up to you as to whether you want to then go around and collect more stuff, whether you want to sell that linen in another space and then go and buy a ruby because they get more and more expensive the more people buy them. Or you might just want to focus on getting your abilities, because you've got a couple of spaces. You've got a small mosque and you've got a large mosque. And if you go to either of them, you've got the option of selling some of your goods in order to gain an ability. If you gain both abilities on that mosque, you gain a ruby. Again, there's a place where you can upgrade your wheelbarrow. If you upgrade your wheelbarrow to the max, you gain a ruby. So you've got a bit of flexibility with it. What is tricky, though, is that all the other players, if their merchant currently occupies a space and you want to go there, you have to pay them 2 lira in order to go there. So sometimes you may want to rejig your plans about where you're moving, because it's very much a game about picking a route, gaining all the things you need, and then using them to pay off stuff. So, for example, my first turn was I went and maxed out my linen. I then visited the small mosque where I traded in my linen for an ability. The next turn, I moved to the place that allowed me to fill up my wheelbarrow with spices. I then moved back, gained the second ability, and that was my first ruby on the board already. I had 4 more to go at that point. So that's kind of like an example of how you'd move about the board and do that. And then there's a couple of other things you can chase as well. Like there's a governor that if you go there, you get to take a bonus card. There's I can't remember what they're a smuggler. That's it. And if you catch the smuggler, you can pay him in order to take a good of any kind. And yeah, there's kind of like, so your whole thing is you're wheeling and dealing kind of throughout this game, but also trying to work out your route. There's one good that they very deliberately made harder to get than the others. So there are 4 goods in the game. You've got your fruit, you've got linen, you've got spice, and then you've got jewellery. The fruit, linen, and spice have warehouses you can go to, and they just fill up your wheelbarrow with however many you can currently fit in your wheelbarrow. But jewellery, you have to gamble on getting, or there are 1 or 2 places where you can pick up some jewellery through other means, basically. So yeah, it's a really interesting game because it really gets you thinking about prioritizing where you want to go to, but you're also reacting to everyone else's moves, because if someone goes somewhere, someone goes on a spot that you want to go to, it's usually better that you make other plans to go somewhere else, because you don't really want to start giving up too much money. At the same time, sometimes you may want to do that because you want to prioritize getting something else. So it's a game about prioritization and planning in advance, and it's a really cool game for that. I really enjoyed it, and I really want to bring it out again sometime soon. It is one of the higher rated games on Board Game Geek, and I think it's fully deserving of it. This comes with a big recommend from me. Really unique, really great game. Anyway, that's all I've got to say on that. Now we can both talk about something. Let's talk about Outer Rim, which me and you played the other day, Ian. How did you find Outer Rim?
I really liked it, as you'd probably expect, because you slap a Star Wars logo on something, I'm more inclined to enjoy it than not.
You and God knows how many hundreds of thousands or maybe even millions of people.
Yes, I think at least I'm aware of my bias. I think a lot of people aren't. Yeah, I think we discussed its purpose, didn't we, when we played it? We had a chat about whether the purpose of the game was beating your opponent or enjoying the story, which when we played, I very much enjoyed creating a weird story and working through said story. And the point gauge or fame gauge was more of a marker of, cool, this chapter in the story's over, as opposed to a you've beaten your opponent sort of thing. So I don't know. I think it's an interesting one because I had much more fun enjoying it as like a story thing than I did as a competitive game. And I feel like you felt the same way.
Yeah, I definitely did. It's interesting because it's kind of weird because we were talking about this a little earlier with the RPG things, and what you're doing in this is you're taking a character and you're writing a new story for them and doing stuff that you wouldn't necessarily do with them. Like, every character starts off with kind of like a goal to give you somewhere to start off with doing. So it might be, if you're Boba Fett, hunt down this bounty, or what was it in my case? I've forgotten what I had now. I
You were
had to
Jyn
place
Erso and you were
two.
bombing Imperial planets.
Yeah, so I had two planets that I had to visit that were under Imperial rule, and I had to basically place a marker on them by passing a skill test and saying that planet has now taken some damage. I've basically done some terrorism here, and then I had to go to the other one that was on the other side of the map. So that was kind of my starting focus. And yours was you were collecting droids.
I was IG-88 and I started with a bounty-based mission, but my character mission was to have two droids in my crew,
Yeah.
and then I can basically use them as health tokens.
Yeah. Yeah. So essentially, we. Do you want to say a bit about kind of where your story ended up taking you in this game, just to give an idea?
Yeah, so I decided to play IG-88 because I thought that his story in current canon isn't as fleshed out. So I thought for me it's the one that I could do stuff and it felt like it could be a thing.
Yeah.
So I started off hunting a bounty, and that bounty appeared on like the first planet I got to,
Yeah.
which was sort of like I accept this bounty. Goes to first bar for information and sees bounty drinking in the corner.
Yeah. It was like immediate.
Immediate,
Yeah.
yeah, immediately captures bounty, and then sees an advert board for delivering goods to another planet, and go, well, while I'm here, and then that was his story for the next 9 turns, which was walking past an advert board and going, well, I'm going there anyway, and I ended up just delivering goods from planet to planet for about 8 turns, just dropping things off. Um, Eventually super glued Mandalorian armor to the outside of my armor. Um, and then
You ended up with the
went
Millennium
through.
Falcon, didn't you, as well?
I did end up with the Millennium Falcon. I only ended up with the Millennium Falcon because it got to the point at the end, towards the end stage of the story, and like I think we just had a game of Sabak, and I cheated, and you noticed. Which in my head canon it was sort of like I was losing Sabak, and then like out like like a droid port, just a card pops out, and he's like, "I'll take that." And it's very obvious, and everyone's like, "You're cheating," and it's like, "No, not me." um, yeah. Then I got like a couple of bounties, didn't I? There was one in a spaceship where the guy got away, and then I came back with a better spaceship and blew him out the sky.
Yeah.
Um, that was it. So I had Ketsuonyo's ship, which is a Lancer class pursuit vessel.
Yeah.
And I attacked him with that, failed, went and bought the Falcon and came back and got him again. I think it was something like that. But yeah, and it's a fun little story. I did a lot of delivery missions to Kessel, and then
Yeah.
did like 3 bounties in like the space of one, including attacking you at one point
Yeah.
because you're a rebel.
Yeah. I was.
But yeah, it was a fun game that I knew the story of. I
Yeah.
think if you said to me, "We're going to play this game, and whoever gets the end wins," I think I would have been more like, "Eh."
Yeah, I
Game's
mean,
okay.
it
I think it was
basically.
more fun for me picking someone like IG-88. I feel
Mm,
like if I picked Han Solo, I would have felt the need to do just Han Solo stuff, which is fine, but it sort of relinquishes a lot of the freedom of creating your own story when you're trying to be Han Solo.
yeah, I mean, one of the things I will say is what we were kind of like leaning on a second ago is even if you're not the person that wins this game, you still feel like you've had an adventure and you've built a little bit of story around them. Like with Jin Erso, I very quickly, like in the beginning of the game, I got a special hatch that kind of like attached to my ship that allowed me to hide illegal goods and allowed me to deliver them easily. So essentially, I was a terrorist that was also smuggling illegal goods. That was kind of like my character that had a horrible gambling addiction as well, because it seemed like they just kept getting in these situations where they were playing Sabat, or they were. I think there was a point where I was rolling dice as well. It actually described it as a game of rolling dice, which didn't go so well for me. It just seemed like there was this really weird thing, and it kind of reminded me a little bit of the board game Arkham Horror, where it was another one of these where you're moving across a board. You're actually playing a cooperative game to shut everything off, but everyone develops little stories. Like we had one person that when they played, they became like they pretty much became a journalist throughout the entire thing. They gained money by basically turning in news stories and stuff like that everywhere. And this kind of like feels like it fits the same kind of mold as that, really. Just to break the game down a bit, because there is game here. It kind of like it works in a number of phases. So usually, first of all, you'll move across this galaxy. If you bump into patrols that are going, so you've got your four factions. You've got the rebels, you've got the syndicate, you've got the Imperials, and what was the other one? I forgot. It was the
Uh,
Hut, wasn't it?
there was the Hut Cartel, yeah.
Yeah. So you had those guys that all have patrols, and you have a reputation that if you've got a bad reputation with them, well, unless you've got a good reputation with them, you'll always stop on their space and you'll have an encounter with them. If you've got a negative one, you're fighting them, basically. If you're neutral, then you might be fighting them, but it might be something else happens as well. So it is a game about choosing how you're moving across the board. There's kind of like a movement phase where you can choose not to move and just take money instead. Then you've kind of got your action phase, which only really happens if you're currently inhabiting a planet rather than one of the spaces, I suppose you'd say. And when you're on a planet, you can do various things like you can trade, you can hunt down a contact that's there. You don't doesn't have to necessarily be a bounty. You can just look at a token and have an event with them, or an event on that space, or there's various things you can do. Oh, sorry, that's the last phase, isn't it? Where you interact with the people on a planet or on the space that you're on. You kind of like in the second phase, you're kind of like visiting the markets and stuff like that, taking jobs, maybe buying some cargo in order to take somewhere else, buying a ship, or just buying some mods and stuff like that to give you a little bit more when it comes to fighting stuff. And I would say if there even if you take this as a story game, if there's one thing that's a little lackluster in it, it's the combat, I would say.
It's a very sort of both players roll dice. Whoever gets better dice rolls wins.
Yeah,
It's
so yeah,
there's not a huge amount of complexity or nuance.
yeah. It's it's fine though because
Yeah,
dying isn't the end of your game. Simply, if you lose all
it's
your
if
health, or
anything, it's a mild interference in what you're doing.
you
It's
still
not
get.
doesn't
Yeah, I was going to say you still get an encounter in your next turn. The only thing you can't do, is you can't move, and you can't gain money from that first phase thing because you have to take a turn in order to recuperate or fix your ship. So yeah, it's like you say, it's a mild inconvenience more than something that holds you back, and that's very much down to the fact that this is a storytelling game. It's not a competitive grand strategy game of some sort, you know. But yeah, I would say I still really enjoy this game. I'm like, out of the three of us, I'm probably the person that's least into Star Wars. I still enjoy it, but I'm not like someone that has to hunt down the fiction and stuff like that and read it and go beyond the films and stuff, you know. And I still got enjoyment out of this. It still tells a good little story that's gonna have a twist on these things. You know, the things that you might think about these characters. Like, yeah. How about you? What's your closing thoughts for this?
I really enjoyed it as a story thing. I'm, I'm not sure I would enjoy it anywhere near as much if someone forced me to play it with the goal to win. I think, like I said earlier. But yeah, it was a very enjoyable little story game where I got to play a quirky little cheating robot.
Yeah, excellent. So yeah, if there is one warning though that I would put out for this game, it's that if you're going to play this with someone who has no interest in Star Wars at all, and perhaps who actively dislikes it, you're not going to win them round with this game. I think they're
It's
not going to
without saying
enjoy it.
rude, it's
Yeah,
nothing special.
yeah, yeah.
It's
It's
not a
not a
special game.
yeah. Like if you're looking for a story-driven game, there's still things like Tales of the Arabian Nights and stuff like that that I think does work on a better level in terms of a story generating game and things like that. But if you're into Star Wars, you would play this over Tales of the Arabian Nights any day of the week. I think that's
Cool.
what
I think that's fair.
I'd put it down to. Okay, moving on. Survive. Escape from Atlantis. This is the second game that has been on my to play list for the longest time now that finally got around to playing. This if Istanbul was us the other night playing a game where you have to really think through your moves carefully and really plan out and have kind of like a strategy in order to play it and stuff like that. This is the complete opposite. This is just mean, mindless fun. This is there is an island in the center of the board and it is sinking. You are trying to get as many of your meeples off the island and over the body of water and onto one of the four islands that are spaced out on the corners. Because towards the end of the game, if someone flips over the island tile that shows the volcano on, then everything's over, game over, everyone dies that's still left on there. So, what's cool about this and what really sets the tone is at the beginning when you build your island by placing
Before you
these.
crack on, did you
Yeah.
play this with Sean?
Yes.
Did
Yes.
you? Yeah. Okay. Good luck.
Uh, Honestly, it went great.
Oh, really? I just
Yeah.
can't imagine him not wanting to trigger off the island and kill everyone.
So we played this with his girlfriend, and he was very much picking on her. So, in fairness, I think both of us kind of were. Okay. So I'll explain the game a bit, and then I'll explain what happened. Yeah. So at the beginning of the game, you build this island, which is going to be made up of sandy beach tiles, forest tiles, and mountain tiles. The idea is that on your turn, you are going to have to remove one of those tiles, and you start off with the sandy beaches, then you move on to the forest, then you move on to the mountains, and the mountains are the one where one of them has a volcano on. But the idea is you get that, and the tile you take gives you, it'll either give you a little bonus or it'll make something appear on that tile or where that tile was, where that's now sunk into the ocean. Something might appear there. Could be something good, could be something bad. So once you've built your island and it's all built up, you take your bunch of meeples, and everyone in turn order, one by one, you get to place one meeple on one space, and the next person gets to place one meeple on one space until everyone's out of meeples. The thing is, the bottom of these meeples all have a number on underneath them. That's how many points you'll score if you save this meeple, and they will range from 1 to 6. As soon as that meeple is placed down on the board, you are then no longer allowed to look at it ever again until the end of the game. Even if it gets eaten or wiped out, you still can't look at it. You have to remove it from the board and make sure no one can see the bottom of it. So unless you've got a very good memory, because I would say you've probably got somewhere between 10 and 12 meeples that you're putting down, I think. So yeah, you're gonna find it hard to keep track of which meeples they are. throughout the game. But once you've placed all that down, the game kind of begins. And everyone gets these boats as well that they can place. Everyone gets 2 boats at the beginning of the game that they can place around the island as well. So the idea is, on your turn, you get 3 movement points. You can move 1 meeple 3 times if you want. You could move 3 meeples once, or you could move 1 meeple twice and 1 meeple once, with the caveat that if that meeple is in the water, you can only spend 1 movement point in the water to kind of like represent that they're swimming, so they're slow. They're moving slower than they would normally be able to move. So most of the time, most people will make a beeline for as many of the boats on the island as possible. In a 3-player game, it's going to be 6 boats around that island, so everyone's probably going to be making a beeline for them and trying to stuff as many meeples in there as possible. On the second phase, this is when you then roll the creature dice. There are 3 creatures in the base game. You've got a sea monster, you've got whales, and you've got sharks. Sharks eat any swimmer that's on the hex that they're on. The whale destroys any boats on the space that they're on, and the sea monster both trashes a boat and eats any of the survivors that are on there. And they all have very varying amounts of movement. The sea monster, if you roll that face, they move 1 space. The sharks can move 2, and the whales can move 3. So you'll find very quickly that the whales are wrecking those boats fairly quickly at the beginning of the game as well. There's also some really cool rules about dominance over how many meeples are in a boat. So if, say, the red player has 2 meeples in the boat and the yellow player only has 1 meeple in the boat, bear in mind that there are only 3 spaces on each boat for people to get into. That boat is completely under control of the red player. The yellow player cannot do anything at that point to move that boat. If a boat has no meeples on it at all, anyone can move that boat. If you've got a red player, a yellow player, and a green player all in one boat, it means any of those 3 players can move that boat. So it means you can actually use one of your movement points on your turn, especially at the beginning when everyone's making a beeline for the boats. You could spend one of your movement points just to go, yeah, I'm going to move that boat 1 space away so it's no longer connected to land. Just to really wind everyone up. Obviously, when you remove one of the tiles, it may have a meeple on. You drop that meeple in the water, and then they can move. They can only move the slow 1 space at a time afterwards as well. But on that space, if you have one of the green tiles, which tend to spawn things on them, if you spawn a shark onto that space that you've just dropped the meeple into, they're just dead automatically, and they're wiped off the board. So there is a lot of potential to be mean in this game. There was one moment in the game where myself, Sean, and Sean's girlfriend, we all had one meeple in one boat, and Sean's girlfriend moved the boat onto the shore. In the subsequent turn, she didn't have the movement then to be able to put her meeple onto the land that it had gotten to. Me and Sean moved off there, then rolled the sea serpent and moved the sea serpent onto that space with the boat, and that wiped her out. So she did all the movement to get us all the way across, and then she just got trashed at the end of it.
Ruthless.
I had a token that allowed me to move the whale into any vacant space at any point that I wanted to at some point as well, and I thought, I'm going to save this. I don't want to be mean to anyone until someone's mean to me. So, basically, I then used it with against Sean's girlfriend because she picked on me. So straight away it was kind of, yep, she had a boat with 3 of her own meeples on, and I moved a whale right up next to it. So the next time someone rolled the whale on the dice, it was just a case of bang, all those meeple are in the water, and they got eaten by a shark pretty much straight after that as well, and it just wiped 3 of her meeples off the board automatically. Honestly, we all enjoyed it because we knew what we were getting into to begin with. We knew, I kind of like said, this is a mean game. This is a mean game. If you get too hung up on winning, then we're going to have a bad time, kind of thing. I didn't say that, but I think we all kind of got that. So we just kind of had fun with it. I think this is a great game, and I really want to play it again. It is a hell of a lot of fun. I wouldn't play this with someone that is super competitive, because they're probably going to have a bad time at some point, because it's usually they're in one of two situations. They're either the person that's currently winning, so everyone is picking on them, or they're not happy because they're not winning. It's gonna be one of those
Right.
two situations if someone is super competitive about this game, because it is designed in such a way that whoever's currently winning, everyone is naturally going to pick on them. It's just got too many mean things you can do in this game in order to not do that, if that makes sense. So yeah, I think it's one that you have to go into in the mindset of we're just going to go in and play this and have fun. If you've certainly got those people that you can play this with, I would thoroughly recommend this. It's a real fun game. How do you think that sounds to you?
I'd need to be in the right mindset for it, I think.
I get the impression that you probably wouldn't enjoy playing this with Sean.
Depends what mood he's in, because like
Yeah,
thing is, a game with Sean, depending on who he's decided to pick on, can either be a fun game where you get to compete and play, or a game where he decides that making your day worse is worth his day.
yeah,
So when we played, what did we play? And basically he made it so you went last every turn, not so
oh,
that he
that
could
was
go
Lords of
first.
Waterdeep. Yeah, yeah,
Lords of Waterdeep. He did that to annoy you.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And it wasn't a tactical move so that he could go first. It was a tactical move so that you would go last,
yeah,
knowing
yeah,
that you would be trying to stop that. He based a lot of his game around trying to make it so that he would always go first. He could always reclaim going first and make it so you go last.
yeah,
Which, you know, when he does that to like someone, I can't see a position where that's fun. And it's not like
yeah,
he's
yeah,
equally irritating everyone in that instance. He's focusing one person. And it feels like the sort of game where very easily you could just go, cool, I'm going to make that person's day worse.
yeah, yeah, definitely.
So I think I'd like to play it with a group of people that are happy to troll each other, but not one that has a penchant for changing his tune and suddenly just picking on one person because he's enjoying the reaction.
Yeah, sure, sure. But yeah, we obviously caught him on a good night the other night and had a hell of a lot of fun with it. Really enjoyed it, and yeah, really want to play it again sometime. Only got one more game to talk about, and it's one we've talked about a hell of a lot before, but I think we always enjoy talking about this one. We've got Skull again, and after playing a few games of this, normally tried something. We experimented a bit. We decided to play Skull blind. So just
Right.
shuffling our discs and not looking at it, just putting it there, and then just trying to bluff with it. And all three of us were doing it on this. That caused a hell of a lot of anxiety for me because, good God,
How
like,
miserable were you by the end of this?
um, I was better after a while, but to begin with, it was hell because it really felt like you were always in a no-win situation with it because you were almost the game turned into who's going to bid a ridiculous amount because they're going to have to they're going to have to turn over their own randomly chosen mats first. Like, it became evidently clear after a while that the play on every game was just to say, if it was your turn to go first, would just go three. And that's it. Because in theory, at the beginning of the game, when everyone's got three flowers and one skull, the time of the game when it's statistically most likely that you're going to have all flowers on the board is at the beginning of the game. As more are put down, more skulls would go on the board. So no one was motivated to go was ever motivated to go anything but three and flip them over. At which point the game became a bit boring, and so we decided
Yeah,
to make
I
these
can
rules.
see how you could get annoyed by that because
Yeah,
also at the same time, it's not like you're predicting what you know of someone. for a lot of
Yeah.
the game. Like you know what Sean's like, but you know what you're like. You know what order you might put things in and how likely you are to bluff. No one knows what anyone's doing, and it's all just luck. So
Yeah.
there's no real thought process. It is just, well, I might be lucky this time, so why not guess?
I mean, if anything, I just wanted to bring it up because it was an interesting social experiment. Because before that, it I was getting like really bad anxiety from it, like of having this pile of cards. And when I think we got up to 3 at one point where all of us had 3 on there, and the number got up to 5 or something like that, and it just felt like mental torture because like you know that at that point 3 out of 4 of your beer mats are down, which means that chances are your skull is in there by that point. And it feels like, am I just going to say 6 on the chance that I am able to flip 6? Or are they baiting me into this because they know chances are I've got that skull in there? Like, it's like you say, it's not in your control anymore because it's easy to bluff when you know your skull is in there. Like, you know where your limits are, where you're going to be able to push and it's going to be able to be believable. But in this situation, it was pure chance, and that just played hell on me. Just, man, it was an experience. I will say it wasn't fun. I won't say that at all. It got less fun once we realised that the play was to bid very early, very early on in the game in a way that no one else can counter bid you. Like, until it got to that point, it was on one hand it was horrible, but also it was kind of fun. And then we started developing these rules of you have to put down 2 random mats at first, but the problem is that if someone then starts to lose too many of them, the game kind of loses its oomph, kind of thing. Because
Fizzles out fairly quickly after that, I guess.
it does. Literally, the only fun then in that case is finding out as soon as you've lost 1 beer mat, if you're putting 2 of them down to begin with, it means if you're putting down 1 more at some point, it means you're going to be exposed at that point. Everyone will know whether you've got a skull or whether you only have a hand of flower cards at that point because your other one got removed from the game. Because we were also removing randomly every single time, we were never choosing, even if you hit your own skull. It was interesting, I would say. Like, I wouldn't like to try it again, I don't think. I think the next time I play Skull, it'll be, yeah, we're not playing with those rules ever again. It was fun just to see what would happen, but I really enjoy Skull, and I want to play it like a normal human being, I suppose. But yeah, like, do you still find you've still got whenever you have a game night or something like that, you always still think to yourself, I wouldn't mind playing Skull if we've got like a spare 5 minutes or something like that? Do you feel like
I do feel that, yeah.
Yeah, because I still definitely do, like, and
although for me it's not oh, we're about to sort of make a move and we've got spare time. It's more we're waiting for someone to show up. I'd love to crack out Skull.
yeah, it's really that addictive. Like, it's such a simple premise, but it packs a lot of punch at the same time. You can get a lot of out of game out of something that has very little to it, I think, is the way I would put it, probably. Like,
yeah, it's very, very simplistic, but the idea of bartering with each other for stuff that none of you really know the answer to, the risk reward of it, when you get it right, is so satisfying, especially if you've really gone in hard.
Yeah, definitely.
Or if you know that you've set someone up to fail, like you know for a fact they cannot win.
Yeah.
And they're like turning every beer mat over with like, oh excellent, got this one. Oh, excellent, got this one. You're celebrating, but I know by number 4 you've definitely got a skull, and you're just watching them torture themselves.
I think one of my favourite things ever in Skull is whenever someone, say, puts in their bid and it's ridiculous, so they'll go like 7 or something like that, and then you just turn to the other person and both of you just kind of go, or something like that, you know?
Yeah.
Just like, they've just absolutely buried themselves. Like, I love that.
No, that's fine. I won't go any higher than that. And they're like, Oh, okay.
Yeah. Oh man, it's a good game. It's a good game. Everyone should have a copy of Skull in their collection because it's that good. But anyway, that actually brings us to the end of this podcast. So thank you very much for joining us. If you would like to follow us on social medias, you can do at Everybody Dice on Twitter and at Everybody Dice Show on Instagram. We also have our Facebook page down there, facebook.com/Everybody Dice. Go over there and give us a follow on there too if you could. If you've liked this video, please give us a like, a share, subscribe, all that stuff. It really helps us out and helps please that pesky algorithm. And otherwise, there should be some stuff on screen right now. Please do feel free to click through to any of those and watch more of our stuff. Thank you.
So make it difficult for you and react to the stuff. It's right. Oh, no. Is that gonna? Are you gonna be able to put one? Hang on. If I with that, are you gonna make it so one appears?
I can't really. It's all down to the timing of how long we leave it before the end of the video. So the longer we talk,
just gonna let me flail
the longer it's
like
off.
An idiot. And...
So, anyways, till next time, we will see you soon. Bye.